In today's video, I'm really excited to be sharing the 7 best pieces of advice and tips for climbing technique that I received from the various professional climbers and pro coaches that I worked with over the last year. So on my channel in the past year, I've shared a lot of different perspectives and I've shared a lot of different pieces of advice on how to improve your climbing. So these are the tips that I found myself calling on the most over the last year. They're the tips that I keep returning to again and again and have had the most impact on my climbing and continue to have the most impact on my climbing and will continue to have the most impact on my climbing, I'm sure, in 2024. So let's dive into tip number 1. First tip that I have is one from friend of the channel, Alex Waterhouse. This is one that we filmed right back at the beginning of the year. In fact, I think it might have actually been December of the year before, but we'll allow it. So the general idea behind this video was a collection of tips and techniques to help to maximize your reach on the wall. This video was filmed with shorter climbers in mind because Alex and I are both on the shorter side, but I think we both agreed towards the end of the video that actually all of the tips were pretty universal, irrespective of your height, for when you were at a climbing move that required a little bit more extension of your natural reach. The tip that I specifically wanted to highlight in this video though, which I find myself calling on all of the time, I find myself thinking about it so often, and I've since revisited it with sessions recently, like the kilter session with Alex Puccio, is creating time above a hold with your hips and also using momentum. So Alex explains it way better than I could.
So a really important concept when you're doing dynamic movement is to think about like the arc of your hips while you're doing it. So if you think about standing up against the wall, if you're up against the wall and then you start in close and then you come up, you're always falling out. So when you're like coming out from a move, you're always falling out. So what you need to focus on is to start with the hips out, do the move, you have time where the hips come in and then come back out to like come through it. So that gives you way more time than if you go up like that and you're always falling out. So this blue one kind of demonstrates it nicely. If you put your hips really close to the wall and then jump, you're basically just jumping outwards. You're pushing your whole body out. Whereas if you start with the hips out, float them in, and then you have that like dead point where you're on the inside. So hips back, thrust the hips in, loads more time. If you have your hips in like that, and you try and let go and clap and then let go, hold on again, you have really little time. Whereas if I come out with my hips, and I thrust them in, that's probably quite a good way of doing it, is to try and clap it. So it's like, if you have your hips in, you're always falling outwards. So the idea being on the move, you're trying to have your hips moving in when you start, so they've got time to come all the way in, and then all the way back out again. You have so much more time to do the move.
So in at number 6, we've got try things that are way too hard for you. So this was a piece of advice that was actually given to Nathan during a session with our good friend and friend of the channel, Emil. I often think back on it during sessions, and the reason I like it so much is because Emil really hit a point about how we often close off learning to ourselves because we're a little afraid to try boulders that are too hard. Not just boulders that we think are too hard, but boulders that are way out of our range. Often the goal of a project is getting to the top. If we don't think we can realistically get to the top, we might not try it at all. But there's a whole really valuable process that we can undertake by trying boulders that are just ridiculously hard for us. Emil took Nathan on a session at Reading Hangar where he tried boulders that he categorically knew were way too hard for him, but still learned a bunch, largely about how to try really hard and how to reimagine what success looks like during a bouldering session.
We're going to get into what, in my opinion, is one of the most crucial aspects to evolving as a climber. And it's something that a lot of people are missing out on, and you might be as well, which is to try stuff that's just ridiculously hard for you, that's way above your theoretical limit, and just improve microscopically on that. Like, you don't even have to do the moves, you just have to visualize that it could be possible, and it'll help you progress. So we're going to do that with you. You've never tried a black climb in this gym. Nope. And I've seen you climb a fair amount now. That's really dumb. You should be on them. You should be on every single one, trying a little bit, like trying the moves. Not necessarily trying to do the entire climbs, but just pushing that threshold of what you think is possible. What we're focusing on is just the process of learning, the process of understanding microscopic details that makes it slightly easier, like where to place the thumb, where to have the hold, pull open hand, pull like a crimp, pinch, high up, low, details.
I think it was really interesting trying moves those hard for me. And just like those body positionings at the end, I was getting really tired even just like holding them and trying to move out of them. But it was a really interesting exercise in how to tackle that like hard level of climbing for me.
The eagle-eyed among you will have spotted the drones on Emil's feet, and the super eagle-eyed among you will have also noticed that we've made the switch to Mad Rock shoes. There's a lot of hype around the drones, and we totally get it. If you're in the UK, you might be thinking, I've not seen those around, but I'd encourage you to do some digging on Mad Rock. They're a fantastic company, and you can now get a hold of the shoes in the UK, which you couldn't before. I expect we'll all be seeing a lot more of Mad Rock around in the UK, but if you want to be one of the first to try them out, you can use HMB free in all caps for free shipping on your Mad Rock order. So that brings me really nicely on to my next tip, which is to try and reimagine or redefine to yourself what success looks like during a session. So this tip is actually probably a blend of two different sessions that I had with two separate coaches, but that meld really nicely into one overall point about climbing mindset and how to redefine success and do away with ego. Recently we filmed a video with Parkinson of Catalyst, which went down really nicely because it was largely about mindset for improvement and about how as we develop in our climbing, we tend to develop a little bit of an ego. So I'll include Louis' tip here.
Once we get to doing like V7s or so, I think it's not just natural, but kind of unavoidable that along our journey of getting more experience as a climber, we've acquired a little bit of an ego. I.e., I think I now do V7 boulders, and if I was to fall off an easy boulder, that would upset me.
I think the goalposts change, don't they? Of the word should comes into play a little bit more, and look for things in the gym that you're like, okay, that's a V4, and I should be able to climb V4, but that V4 looks quite hard, and I might not climb it, so I'm going to avoid it.
Because I have this as well. I'm supposed to be some hotshot, really strong climber, and yet sometimes I go into the gym and I just fall off a V2 over and over again, and it used to drive me nuts. I used to get so frustrated about it and so embarrassed about it. Why exactly is that really frustrating and embarrassing? What does it make you feel?
You feel quite proud of the progress you make, right? And it feels like backwards progress if you're working stuff that you've previously, like a milestone that you've reached and then can't reach again, even though that kind of falls apart in every way because every climb is different. So it's not like you tick V1 and you've ticked every V1 in the world.
But this is exactly the issue, is that when I used to fall off easy climbs, or when you fall off a climb way below our grade limit, it's almost like we take it as evidence of like, I thought I was a good climber, but clearly I can't even climb a V1. So I think that's the mistake. I think taking a snapshot of our performance and basing all of our confidence and our value on just that snapshot, I think that's the mistake. And really experienced climbers, and it took me ages to learn this, I think are just more self-secure in their confidence. As in, if they fall off a V3, they don't read anything into it. They don't go, oh no, it means I can't climb V3s anymore. They go, it literally means nothing. It means I fell off the V3. I'm going to try it again. I'll learn some cool stuff.
And then something I think about really often is a session that I had with Hazel Findlay, who is an incredible climber and mindset coach, about defining what success looks like to me and how to improve your climbing with mental hacks effectively. So right at the beginning of that session, Hazel asked me a question, which I asked myself a lot. I have asked myself a lot in sessions subsequently. And the question that she asked me is firstly, which boulders would I expect, which grade of boulder or colour of boulder would I expect to climb during that session with her? And then secondly, would I be disappointed, and why would I be disappointed if I didn't manage to climb a boulder of that colour?
Instead of seeing every boulder as like an opportunity to succeed or to fail, because that's how you're approaching the boulders, right? You're going like, what are my chances? Whereas when I go to an indoor wall, I do not think that at all.
Okay, interesting.
It's more around like, is that something that I feel motivated for? Like, does that look cool? Is that something that I want to work on right now? So I wonder if we can start looking at boulders and being like, does that look fun, rather than, can I do it?
Something that Hazel did really effectively for me was give me a bit of a perspective shift in the expectation that we place on ourselves before a bouldering session and how that might build us up or set us up to fail or have a successful learning experience. Hazel really helped me to see that actually the success of a session doesn't necessarily depend on climbing your hardest grade or flashing a boulder, but actually how much you learned throughout the session. So if I were to, for example, flash a boulder that was way within my grade range and didn't learn much on it, I might have previously defined that as a successful flash, whereas actually, perhaps, I could fail a bunch of times on a boulder, successfully make a move once but never actually complete the boulder, and have learned a hell of a lot more, thereby making it a more successful process. My next tip comes from a session that I had back in the summer with Petra Klingler, and the reason that this tip made it onto my list is that it was such a kind of eureka moment for me, mainly because Petra just described so beautifully this idea of sound and how she uses sound to help with dynamic, coordinated, fast-paced moves where there's lots of different steps that come all in quick succession.
I have kind of a music background. I've been playing the violin for a long time. My parents also being musicians. I'm like thinking a lot also in sound. So I can kind of hear my movement.
Sure, like a rhythm.
Yeah, like exactly. Like I know my feet do like I tap, like go in the position, and then it's like swing, bam, ba-dam. And I kind of hear that in my head and kind of know when a movement or I was close, I know, okay, it sounded like this. So I try to reproduce the sound of it.
I'm a really long way off being able to execute these kinds of moves, but every time I'm in the gym trying, I always think of Petra and her lovely musical analogy. So my next tip harks to something that I struggle with personally, and that is dynamic movement, and also specifically foot plants. Anything where I have to make impact with the wall in a way that feels uncontrolled is something that I've always really struggled with. I had a session with Ross Fulkerson of Team USA when we were in San Diego, and he explained to me that a really effective way to try and eliminate the fear of impact or try and learn and dial dynamic moves without having to commit to them in a scary situation on the wall is to just do them on the ground.
Off the wall for a moment.
Yeah.
We're gonna try and just visualize you're doing that same movement. So we're here and then jump. Yeah, exactly. And we can do that one more time. Boom. And then imagine like that little, the jump and pull or the grab and pull we did over there. That's what we're trying to do, and engage as fast as we can with this right hand. So you can kind of see how all of the different warm-up things we did are coming together, where we have the fast twitch, like engagement of that green jump, and then the accuracy of the off the wall jump, and then kind of commitment to the foot, standing up over the foot of the slab wall, and then the right hand from the jump and grabs.
Okay. It's such a simple tip, but it made so much sense to me, and it's something that I do so often now. If I'm stood in front of a dynamic move that I'm a little bit too scared to try on the wall because I might fall off, I try and practice the movement or imitate the movement that I might try and execute on the wall, off the wall. Same with like a foot plant or a jump to a hold that I have to land on. I just do it on the ground, and then I build myself up to do it on the wall. I think it's part of that process of breaking down movement into chunks that feel manageable. Kind of seems like the most obvious thing in the world, but it wasn't obvious to me until Ross kind of spelt it out to me, and it's something that I use all the time now. So my next tip is one that I'm sure if you've watched my coaching videos with B, you will already know, and it's the try hard turtle versus the jolly giraffe. So something that I always love about B's sessions is that she's really amazing at describing and explaining things in a way that just makes sense. She uses a lot of like analogy and just like kind of visual aids to help you understand what she's talking about. And one of those that she shared during a session at Hanger Reading was the try hard turtle and the jolly giraffe.
Are you a try hard turtle or a jolly giraffe when you climb? This may seem like a bit of a strange analogy to be making, but what I notice a lot on the wall is people that are habitually pulling a lot, and bicep abuse that I like to call it, end up being a bit of a turtle being stuck in their shell. Not only are you losing a lot of distance in your climbing, you're also not activating big muscles in your back and your scapula. What I want to see is an engagement of a nice long neck to get maximum reach through those moves. So 2 things that we can do from right at the beginning again within our warm-up. We can do scapular shrugs, practicing drawing the ears away from the shoulders, beginning in this position like a turtle and then drawing the ears away. Then when we're on the wall, again, we're consciously trying to climb more like a giraffe, pivoting around that nice straight arm and getting maximum reach out of the body.
For all of the tips in this video, I said that I use them all the time, and I do, but this one is one that I probably use every single session that I'm trying something hard or projecting, and that is a tip that Hazel gave me, or a technique rather, that Hazel gave me during the same session that I talked about just before, to give yourself a score out of 10 to determine how hard you are actually trying.
Trying hard's a weird one, and it's something that I've struggled in my coaching, because I kind of naturally try hard. Like, it's something that I've always been fairly good at.
Yeah.
But what I found with the people that I coach is there's often a reason why they are not trying hard, and usually it's like a fear-based reason. So like, because they're like, well, why, you know, if they don't believe that they can do the problem, or they believe that the outcome matters too much, then they're like, well, if this feels hard, what's the point in trying?
Yeah.
And that's often why people don't dig deep. The other thing is that it's a really trained thing. And so I've been climbing from a very young age, so I've had a lot of experience trying hard,
Yeah.
which has allowed me to dig deep. Whereas like if you're coming, like if you're new to sport in general and you start climbing, it might be that you've not ever properly physically exerted yourself, and it's a skill like anything else. So it's important to practice and train.
Sure.
And a nice way to do it is just like giving yourself a mark out of 10. Like if 10's like, you know when you're trying to open a jam jar and you're like,
Like, I can't have tried any harder.
Yeah.
Okay.
Like if you're sure there's nothing more you could have done.
Yeah.
And then, 0 is just like dropping off.
Yeah.
It can be nice to give yourself like a mark out of 10.
Okay.
And see if you can do a little bit more next time. So like you held that red pinch and you sort of were like, and then you like let go.
Yeah.
How would you mark that out of 10?
Maybe like, oh gosh, what, that actual move itself, like not very highly at all. Like maybe a 4 at absolute best.
Okay, so maybe we could try that move again and you could give it a 5 or a 6, or just maybe try and push it a bit more. Nice. Go on. Really good. Go on. Yeah, that was cool. That's great.
Yeah.
And it's a bit better, that second one, isn't it? So it's like...
Yeah. That's actually blown my mind. If I compare that to like my first go, now I would say I would rank my effort on the first one way lower. Now I know that was like a 6. The first one was like, I didn't even try. This has been really useful for me, I think, for motivation. Sometimes it's really easy to get disheartened if you feel like I'm trying everything, I'm trying really hard, I'm giving 100% and I still can't get the move. To actually take a step back and think about whether or not you're actually giving 10 out of 10, or whether or not you might actually be giving 6 or 7 out of 10. We don't always try 100%, and a lot of the time that's okay. Maybe we shouldn't give 10 out of 10 all of the time, because that might lead to injury or mainly injury. I just found Hazel's scoring technique to be a really useful way to evaluate the quality of attempts and to check in with myself. I use it all the time now to check in with myself when I'm trying something that's quite difficult for me, to see whether or not there's maybe like things I could be changing or more I could be giving in certain areas, maybe more commitment, a little bit more oomph, more momentum. I use the scoring system and it works a charm. This also leads nicely into, I guess they could come under the same tip, a tip that Johnny Dawes gave me during our session at Sheffield Hangar. He challenged me to an arm wrestle, asked me to try my hardest, and I did. And then he said, now try even harder. And I pulled a little bit harder. And I guess he was demonstrating that we don't always give 100% first go. We think we're giving 100%, but actually there's a little bit more untapped potential still in the tank, which I just thought was really interesting. The advice that I have left out of this particular list, but might be my favourite piece of advice that I've ever received, was actually also from Johnny, and that is, when thinking about your climbing, you are a wibbly wobbly octopus.
The nervousness that's in your face is going through your body and making different muscles rebel from what you're trying to do.
Yeah.
So it's like your body is like all linked together with fascia. You pull here, you pull there. You're just a huge wibbly wobbly octopus, yeah? So make that wibbly wobbly octopus have the right feeling by, according to the grip, putting your body in the right position and going back to how it felt.
These are tips that I call on all the time. I think about them often. I am super grateful to have worked with so many talented people, so many people who know what they're talking about when it comes to climbing, and it's really nice to be able to share their wisdom on my YouTube channel. So here's to a 2024 of doing the same and learning more about climbing. I hope that you found these useful. I hope that your year is off to a good start, and I will see you in my next video.